Alright, viewers, Jay here, and for this particular episode, we're going to get a little bit controversial. So, once again, another day of quarantine in March 2020 during this coronavirus. And so, this particular topic, like I said, is a bit controversial, and that's why we're going to get into it. So, this is black metal and censorship, aka issues black metal is having with the Antifa scene, or so to speak. Now, what it comes down to is you have groups that are in this anti-fascist category where they are accusing certain black metal bands of certain viewpoints, while there is absolutely a scene called the National Socialist black metal kind of genre. Then again, it's not exactly a musical genre. It's more or less a lyrical viewpoint. So, but there is this NSBM scene, and these bands are pretty blatant when it comes to their views. The problem is this is not exactly a picture. It's not like these particular bands are being targeted. Now, I'll be honest with you, those particular bands are pretty much, the types of bands that are in people's basements. They're not exactly playing like Wacken Open Air or like these huge festivals. So these are by no means well-known bands, and they're kind of typically on the fringe side of the black metal scene. So it's not these particular bands that these anti-fascists are going after. It's pretty much a witch hunt for bands for more or less sillier reasons. It's not really for blatant viewpoints like these NSBM bands. It's these bands like, for example, Behemoth, who just because Nurgle, the singer, had a photograph with, what's his name, Rob from Graveland, he's apparently this Nazi. No, far from it. Just because these two ran in the same black metal circles in Poland way back in the day, and Nurgle has been vocal about, disagreeing with his views, he's still guilty by association. So, we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later, but I want to start off with my own viewpoints. While I don't personally condone the NSBM scene as far as those bands, I don't really care for those bands. That's just me personally. But I also don't care with the far left, anarchy, socialist black metal bands either. But that all comes down to viewpoints. So here's something I want to kind of establish. First and foremost, black metal. Black metal is a genre of music, okay? Essentially, tremolo picking. You can add some keyboards in there. There's blast beats, and then the vocals are guttural, but they're shrieked or screamed, so to speak. Whereas death metal is more of the guttural, deep vocals. So that's musically what constitutes black metal. And then there's the stereotypes of black metal as far as lyrical content. But essentially, you need to remember this. Black metal is not just a musical genre, but it's also a subculture. Okay? And you need to look at that additionally to the music. So black metal is a subculture. Sure, you have its roots with bands like Venom, and then later on Bathory, etc. But it's the Norwegian bands that really kind of put into place that subculture. And then you had Euronymous and, Varg in Mayhem and Burzum, etc. And they kind of established their subcultural rules, like, oh, it has to be satanic, oh, it has to be extreme. And if you look into it, you can recall that, what was it, like Varg was more into like, far right, like Nazism, etc., when it comes to symbols and controversies, whereas Euronymous was more into like far left, like Stalin as a dictator. So I'm going to be honest, they were kids, okay? They were teenagers, they were kind of dorks, and they thought they were cool for, liking these extreme things. I mean, hey, I was a teenager once, and I was like, oh man, I'm so cool, I'm so extreme with the music I like. Ah. Yeah, I mean, that's why when you see the interviews with these bands now, most of them are like, yeah, so listen to our music now. So you can kind of see how many folks in the black metal scene have grown up, so to speak. So that just kind of sets up that past there. Going along with that, it is of my personal viewpoint that the black metal genre is not confined to a lyrical content. I understand what Euronymous and Varg had established, like, oh, it needs to be satanic, but if you go by that logic, then you could have Taylor Swift do a song about Satan, and that's black metal. So, what, Satan was like her ex-boyfriend? Wouldn't be surprised. So, anyway, it's of my humble opinion that black metal is not defined by lyrical content. Subculturally speaking, it tends to be dark, it tends to be grim, it tends to have a dark atmosphere, and then there's the cliches, like, we're into Tolkien, we're into horror movies, we're into all these different things, and yeah, I kind of fit into all of those. But here's something I don't fit into, and this is something I've argued. As a Christian that's into black metal, you hear a lot of like, oh, Christians can't do black metal, it goes against that. Well, that's a subcultural means, you know what I mean? It's coming from the subculture's perspective. But when you look at it musically, you can sing about whatever, and it will still fit in the confines of the black metal genre of music. So you have it where bands like Ancestor and Horde, Horde's a little, they're a bit on the cheesy side, but Ancestor were pretty legit, and they were Christians that did this style of extreme metal, and they got a lot of flack for it early on. Ironically, a band like Ancestor that got like death threats from like Mayhem's band members, right? Hellhammer would later on be on one of their albums in the early 2000s. What is it, The Forsaken? And that's like their best album they've ever done. The drum work is amazing. So, yeah, it's interesting how that kind of turned. But the point of the matter is, you have bands like Crimson Moonlight, Schleckvach, and some of these other Christian bands that they're playing black metal music. It's just they're singing from a Christian ideological viewpoint. And it's of my humble opinion that they have a right to sing about their viewpoints and beliefs. The same way anybody in black metal has a right to sing about their viewpoints and what they believe in, even if I disagree with it. So I'm the type where, let's say there's, I don't know, some church is protesting a black metal show in some country. I, as a Christian, would stand in front of those protesters and be like, you know what? They have a right to sing about what they believe in, even if you disagree with it. That's my personal viewpoint. So somebody in black metal telling me or telling one of those bands, oh, they're Christians, they're not allowed to play this. That's just silly to me. And in the same way, I believe they have a right to sing about their viewpoints, whether it's, satanic or the occult or, anti-Christian or whatever. They have a right to sing about what they believe in. Maybe that's the American in me with the basis of free speech, but I believe they are allowed to voice their viewpoints and what they believe in, even if I disagree. Same thing applies with these NSBM bands. I may not like them, I may not agree with them, but they have a right to sing about their viewpoints the same way the far left extreme bands have a right to sing about what they believe in. So that is my viewpoint on censorship and when it comes to these bands. Now, I believe it is the people's choice when it comes to capitalism. Now, capitalism, I won't even get into capitalism, but the whole point of the matter is, when it comes to our music scene, capitalism, in a way, runs the show. These bands have a product that people want to consume, and it's up to the consumers to purchase them. So that free market in the music scene is what drives it. Going along with that, when you have these fringe bands like the NSBM bands and all those, they're not exactly making money. The scene's super small. There's hardly any of them tour. So, and then you have, let's put it this way, the everyday average bands in general, unless they're the best of the best, or, the most well-known bands, they're just getting by. So it's already a small scene to begin with. And this leads into kind of the witch hunt mentality that I've seen. And having firsthand experience, I've had it where, being from the city of Philadelphia, I've seen Antifa members in action, or poor action, so to speak. They attacked somebody because they believed they were, a right-wing extremist, and it turned out to just be, just some random guy that had a haircut that they targeted, which is terrible. The fact that this guy was targeted because of how he looked, and he got beat up for it. And then there's also the blatant hypocrisy. In Philadelphia, there were 2 Marine Corps reservists that were attacked by Antifa members. I shouldn't laugh. It's terrible. But the thing that makes me laugh is the Marine Corps members were like, "What are you doing? We're not white supremacists. We're Hispanic." And then the Antifa members called them racial slurs. Like, are you kidding me? You're supposed to defend people from that, and you use them against people that had nothing to do with far-right extremism. So because of that witch hunt mentality, it reminds me of, the Red Scare in the 1950s. Like, it's just, are you kidding me? Like, you're just picking at random. Like, at least be more concise if you're going to be that way. And on a principle, on whole, the ideologies that these Antifa members have, whether it's far, far left socialism, which I'm against, socialism, as we've seen in history with communism, etc., it leads to disaster. With Stalin, Russia, Mao Zedong in China, and the point is, it takes away from the individual, and I believe the individual at heart is the one that makes those decisions. You shouldn't force somebody to do good. It should be the individual's choice to do good, etc. So that's why I am not a big fan of that ideology. Same thing with anarchy. We have these governments in place. They're not perfect. They're far from perfect. Human beings are not perfect. That goes along with my personal worldview as a Christian. Human beings are not perfect. They're far from it. But the fact that we can come together and establish certain rules, societal rules, do not steal, owning property, etc., and all these various things. Same thing with these bands. They're allowed to have copyrights to their music. They're allowed to distribute it and play concerts and voice their views, etc. And so that's why with anarchy, I mean, you're talking like, as much as I love Mad Max, that's anarchy. Okay, forget that. Like, I mean, sure, I would be, what's his face, the warlord. I'd ride to Valhalla. Shiny and chrome. Ride eternal to Valhalla, shiny and chrome. I probably got that wrong, but that's like the best part. You spray the... Anyway. So now, on principle, I disagree with those viewpoints. But I understand, being against fascism, but at the same time, as I mentioned with those tactics, censoring free speech and, acts of violence, essentially you're becoming that which you hate. And that's why I personally do not agree with them. I have seen, it seems to me that there tends to be this like strange hyper-focus on these underground bands. And think about bands like, Metallica and Slayer that have had like, or the Sex Pistols, like these bands that have used like Nazi symbols or whatever to like take it to the man, to be controversial. Even though those, at least I hope those bands don't have those viewpoints. I get it. They're trying to, stir up controversy, get attention. Same thing with what is the band Tak or Take from Norway. They had played in Germany, and the guy had like a swastika, and he did that because it was illegal. He was trying to be controversial, and now people are like, "Oh, you're an NSBM band." And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! I don't view that way. I just did it to piss people off because I'm a jerk, to stir up controversy." And then they've played in Israel and, clearly don't, house those feelings. And so, you got to differentiate between what are their actual ideologies, which many of these NSBM bands are proud to say, like, "Oh, I'm a Nazi, I don't care." They're proud to say it. Whereas these other bands are like, whoa, no, I don't feel that way. I just did it to piss people off. So, you see that. And you see that a lot, but it's interesting to me, as I pointed out, the targets that these individuals are going after, these Antifa individuals, they're going after these little-known bands. Like, oh, so-and-so once played session drums for this band that sings about nationalism or something. And let me also go into that. There's a few bands that get accused of being Nazis just because they sing about their country's history, and that's not true. If you believe, if you want to discuss your band's the history of your people or your nation, I don't see anything wrong with that. It doesn't matter, a band like Thonic in Taiwan can sing about Taiwanese history and how Taiwan should be its own nation, yet a band from Finland or Sweden or Norway can't sing about their nation. I don't think that's fair. I think we should celebrate cultures from all over the world. Now, for me, I think we should all celebrate cultures from all over the world cuisine-wise, because I'll eat it all because I'm hungry, and you can tell it's prior to dinner. But anyway, getting back, don't want to lose track. The point is, these bands should be able to sing about those histories, etc., not get flack for it. For example, Marduk got accused of being Nazis, and Marduk were singing about history, and it's been known that the guitarist, I'm terrible with names, but a couple of the members, I know the guitarist from when I've spoken to him in person, but we both were discussing the History Channel. In fact, I think I spoke to him, I remember this was way back in the day, more than a decade ago, but I talked to them about history and their interest in history. I was like, "Oh, you should have like concept albums on history or whatever." I'm not saying I take I'm not taking credit for anything, but you see that with their, I'm definitely taking credit. Marduk sang about history all because of me. It's all because, I'm just kidding. I can't even remember the conversation, but I just remember talking about the History Channel. So the point is, just because they sing about World War II, the realities and horrors of war, doesn't make them a Nazi band. That's the silliest thing in the world. So, in the end, I think it comes down to this hyper focusing on these bands, and they don't have a leg to stand on. These bands are so underground. You'd think, you'd think they'd come after bigger names, etc. And there is hypocrisy in it. You don't see these Antifa members, protesting some other genres of music, or whatever. Let's say a rapper, is racist against white people or something. You're not going to see Antifa, picketing that that rapper or something like that. There is hypocrisy in it. I get it. You should be opposed to all of those racist views. You should disagree with it, but you also want to understand why these individuals believe in what they believe. that's the core of it. There's, you know, you can hit somebody or punch somebody in the face, but that's not going to change their view. I think what it comes down to is you should listen, understand where they're coming from, and then have a discussion. And then if you agree to disagree, that's that. But maybe you might change somebody for the better because of your approachability and the way that you had a discussion with them one-on-one. The fact that you showed that you cared made somebody appreciate it. And so I have, you know, maybe that's the optimistic in me, but I think that people can change their views and they can learn for the better. So that's all, folks. Keep rocking out, and that's all for now.